Hey guys, welcome to Creepypasta Storytime. I'm GilloBoiJr, and today we're going to be doing Ben Drowned, the Majora's Mask Creepypasta. Hope you enjoy. Post number 1, September 7th, 2010. Okay, I need your help with this. This is not copypasta. This is a long read, but I feel like my safety or well-being could very well depend on this. This is video game related, specifically Majora's Mask, and this is the creepiest shit that's ever happened to me in my entire life. Having said that, I recently moved into my dorm starting as a sophomore in college, and a friend of mine gave me his old Nintendo 64 to play. I was stoked to say the least. I could finally play all those games of my youth that I hadn't touched in at least a decade. His Nintendo 64 came with one yellow controller and a rather shoddy copy of Super Smash Bros. And whilst beggars can't be choosers, needless to say it didn't take me long until I became bored of beating up a level 9 CPU. That weekend I decided to drive around a few neighbourhoods, about 20 minutes or so off campus, hitting up the local garage sales, hoping to score on some good deals from ignorant parents. I ended up picking up a copy of Pokemon Stadium, GoldenEye, F-Zero, and 2 other controllers for $2. Satisfied, I began to drive out of the neighbourhood, when one last house caught my attention. I still have no idea why it did. There were no cars there, and only one table was set up with some random junk on it, but something sort of drew me over there. I usually trust my gut on these things, so I got out my car and was greeted by an old man. His outward appearance was, for lack of a better word, displeasing. It was odd. If you asked me to tell you why I thought it was displeasing, I couldn't really pinpoint anything about the man. There was just something about him that put me on edge. I can't explain it. All I can tell you is that if it wasn't for the middle of the afternoon and there were other people in shouting distance, I wouldn't have even approached the man. He flashed a crooked smile at me and asked what I was looking for, and immediately I noticed that he must be blind on one of his eyes. His right eye had that glazed over look about it. I forced myself to look in his left eye instead, trying not to offend him, and asked him if he had any old vintage video games. I was already wondering how I could politely excuse myself from this situation when he would tell me he had no idea what a video game was. But to my surprise, he said he had a few ones in an old box. He assured me that he'd be back in a jiffy, and turned to head back into the garage. As I watched him hobble away, I couldn't help but notice what he was selling on his table. Littered across his table were rather peculiar paintings, various artworks that looked like ink blots that a psychiatrist might show you. Curious, I began to look through them. It was obvious why no one was visiting this guy's garage sale. These weren't exactly aesthetically pleasing. As I came to the last one, for some reason it looked almost like Majora's Mask. The same heart-shaped body with little spikes protruding outward. Initially, I just thought that since I was secretly hoping to find that game at one of these garage sales, some Freudian bullshit was projecting itself onto the ink blots for me. But given the events that happened afterwards, I'm not so sure now. I should have asked the man about it. I wish I could have asked the man about it. After staring at the Majora-shaped blot, I looked up and the old man was suddenly there again, arm's length in front of me, smiling at me. I'll admit I did jump out of reflex and I laughed nervously as he handed me a Nintendo 64 cartridge. It was a standard grey colour one, except someone had written Majora's Mask on it in black permanent marker. I began to get butterflies in my stomach as I realised what a coincidence this was. I asked him how much he wanted for it. The old man smiled at me and told me I could take it for free. That it used to belong to a kid about my age that didn't live here anymore. There was something weird about how the man phrased that, but I didn't really pay any attention to then. I was too caught up in not only finding this game, but getting it for free. I reminded myself to be a bit sceptical, since this looked pretty shady, and there's no guarantee it would work. But then the optimist inside me interjected that maybe it was some kind of beta version or pirated version of the game, and that was all I needed to be back on Cloud 9. I thanked the man, and the man smiled back at me and wished me well, saying, "Goodbye then." At least that's what it sounded like to me. All the way in the car ride home, I had a nagging doubt that the man had said something else. My fears were confirmed when I booted up the game. To my surprise, it just worked fine, and there was one save file named simply Ben. "Goodbye, Ben," he was saying. Goodbye, Ben. I felt bad for the man, obviously, a grandparent and obviously going senile, and I, for some reason or another, reminded him of his grandson, Ben. Out of curiosity, I looked at the game save file, eyeballing it. I could tell that he was pretty far in the game. He had almost all of the masks, and 3/4 of the bosses remained. I noticed that he'd used an owl statue to save his game. He was on day 3 and by the Stone Tower Temple, with hardly an hour left before the moon would crash. I remember thinking that it was a shame that he had come so close to beating the game but had never actually finished it. I made the new file, named it Link, out of tradition, and started the game ready to relive my childhood. For such a shady looking game cartridge, I was impressed at how smoothly it ran. Literally just like a retail copy of the game, save for a few minor hiccups here and there, like textures being where they shouldn't be, and random flashes of cutscenes at odd intervals, but nothing too bad. However, the only thing that was a little unnerving was the fact that times NPCs would call me Link, and other times they would call me Ben in all capitals. I figured it was just a bug. a fluke in the programming causing our files to get mixed up or something. It did kind of creep me out though after a while, and it was around after I'd beaten the Woodfall Temple that I regrettably went into the save files and deleted the Ben save file. I'd intended to preserve the file just out of respect for the game's original owner. It's not like I needed the second file anyway, hoping that it would solve the problem. It did, and it didn't. Now NPCs wouldn't call me anything. Where my name should be in the dialogue, there was just a blank space. My save file name was still called Link though. Frustrated, and with homework to do, I put the game down for a day. I started playing the game again last night, getting the Lens of Truth and working my way towards completing the Snowhead Temple. Now some of you more hardcore Majora's Mask players know about the 4th day glitch. For those who didn't know, you can Google it. But the gist of it is right at the clock is about to hit 0000 on the final day, you talk to the astronomer and look through the telescope. If you time it just right, the countdown will disappear, and you essentially have another day to finish whatever you were doing. Deciding to do the glitch to try and finish the Snowhead Temple, I happened to get it right on the very first try, and the time counter at the bottom had disappeared. However, when I pressed B to exit the telescope, instead of being greeted by the astronomer, I found myself in the Majora's boss fight room. At the end of the game, the trippy boxed-in arena. Staring at the Skull Kid hovering above me, there was no sound, just him floating in the air above me, and the background music which was regular for the area, but still kinda creepy. Immediately my palms began to sweat. This was definitely not normal. Skull Kid never appeared here. I tried moving around the arena, and no matter where I went, Skull Kid would always be facing me, looking at me, not saying anything. Nothing would happen though, and this kept up for around 60 seconds. I thought the game had bugged out or something, but I was beginning to doubt that very much. I was about to reach for the reset button when a text appeared on my screen. "You're not sure why, but you apparently had a reservation." I instantly recognised that text. You get that message when you get the room key from Anjo with the stock pot in, but why was it playing here? I refused to entertain the notion that it was almost as if the game was trying to communicate with me. I started navigating the room again, testing to see if that was some sort of trigger that enabled me to interact with something in here. Then I realised how stupid I was. To even think that someone could reprogram a game like this was absurd. Sure enough, 15 seconds later, another message appeared on the screen, and again, like the first one, it was already a pre-existing phrase. Go to the lair of the temple's boss? Yes or no? I paused for a second, contemplate what I should press, and how the game would react. When I realised that I couldn't select no, taking a deep breath, I pressed yes, and the screen faded to white, with the words, Dawn of a New Day, with the subtext, I, beneath it, where I was ported to fill me in with the most intense sense of dread and impending fear that I had ever experienced. The only way I can describe the way I felt here is having this feeling of inexplainable depression on a profound scale. I'm normally not a depressed person, but the way I felt here was a feeling that I didn't even know existed. It was such a twisted, powerful presence that seemed to wash over me. I appeared in some kind of weird Twilight Zone version of Clocktown. I walked out of the clock tower, as you normally do when you start from day one, only to find that all of the inhabitants were gone. Usually with the 4th day glitch, you can still find the guards and the dog that runs around outside of the tower. This time, everyone was gone. What replaced them was this ominous feeling that there was something out there, in the same area as me, that it was watching me. I had 4 hearts to my name and the hero's bow, but at this point, I wasn't even considered for my avatar. I felt that I personally was in some kind of danger. Perhaps the most chilling thing was the music. It was a song of healing, ripped straight from the game itself, but played in reverse. The music would get louder, building up as if you should expect something to pop out at you, but nothing ever did, and the constant loop began to wear on my mental state. Every now and then I would hear a faint laugh of the happy mask salesman in the background, just quiet enough that I wasn't sure if I was hearing it right, but just loud enough to keep me determined to find him. I looked in all 4 zones of Clocktown, only to find nothing. No one. Textures were missing. West Clocktown had me walking on air. The entire area felt broken. Hopelessly broken. As the reverse song of healing repeated for what must have been the 50th time, I just remember standing in the middle of South Clocktown realising that I'd never felt so alone in a video game before. As I walked through the ghost town, I don't know whether it was the combination of out-of-place textures and the atmosphere of the haunting melody of the once peaceful and soothing song being butchered and distorted, but I was literally on the verge of tears, and I had no idea why. I hardly ever cry. Something had gripped me here, and this powerful sense of depression that was both foreign and crippling. I tried leaving Clocktown, but every time I attempted to zone out, the screen would fade to black and I would just zone into another part of Clocktown. I tried playing my ocarina. I wanted to escape, and I did not want to be in here. But every time I played the Song of Time or Song of Soaring, it would only say, "Your notes echo far," but nothing happens. By this point, it was obvious the game didn't want me to leave. but I had no idea why it was keeping me here. I didn't want to go inside the buildings. I felt that I would be too vulnerable there to whatever I was terrified of. I don't know why, but I came up with the idea that maybe if I drowned myself at the laundry pool, I could spawn somewhere else and leave this place. As I zoned in and ran towards the pool, that's when it happened. Link grabbed his head, and the screen flashed for a brief moment of the happy mask salesman smiling at the screen. Not Link, me, with Skull Kid's scream playing in the background, and the screen returned. I was staring at the Link statue from playing the song of Elegy of Emptiness. I screamed as the thing just stared back at me with that haunting facial expression. I turned around and ran back out into South Clocktown, and to my horror, the fucking statue had followed me. In the only way I can compare it was like the Weeping Angels from Doctor Who. Every so often, at random intervals, the animation would play of the statue appearing behind me. It was like the thing was chasing me, or, I don't even want to fucking say it, haunting me. By this point, I was on the verge of hysterics, but not even once did the thought of turning off the console occur to me. I don't know why. I was so wrapped up in it. The terror all felt so real. I tried to shake the statue, but it would literally appear right behind me every single time. Link started to begin to make a weird animation. I'd never seen him do this before. He would flail his arms around or spasm randomly, and the screen would cut to the happy mask salesman smiling again for a brief moment before I was face to face with that fucking statue again. I ended up running into the Swordmaster's dojo and ran to the back. I don't know why, but in my panic, I just wanted some kind of assurance that I'm not alone here. To my dismay, I found no one, but as I turned to leave, the statue had cornered me in the cubby in the back. I tried attacking the statue with my sword, but to no avail. Confused and backed into a corner, I just stared at the statue waiting for it to kill me. Suddenly, the screen flashed again to the happy mask salesman, and Link turned to face my screen, standing upright mirroring the statue, looking at me along with his copy, literally staring at me. Whatever was left of the fourth wall was completely shattered while I ran out of the dojo terrified. Suddenly, the game warped me to an underground tunnel, and the reverse song of healing queued up again as I was given a brief moment of rest before the statue started appearing behind me. This time it was aggressive. I could only take a few steps before it would summon behind me again. I hurried my way out of the tunnel and appeared in Southern Clocktown as I ran aimlessly, in a sheer panic. Suddenly, a reed had screamed, and the screen faded to black. Dawn of a new day, and I appeared again. The screen faded in, and I was standing on top of Clock Tower, with Skull Kid hovering over me again. Silent, I looked up and the moon was back, looming just meters above my head. But the Skull Kid just stared at me, hauntingly, with that fucking mask. A new song was playing. The Stone Tower Temple theme played in reverse. In some sort of desperate attempt to equip my bow and fired it off a shot right at the Skull Kid. It actually hit him, and he played the animation of him reeling back. I fired again, and on the third arrow, a text box appeared saying, "That won't do you any good. Hee hee." And I was picked up off the ground, levitated upwards to my back, and then Link screamed as he burst into flames, instantly killing him. I jumped when this happened. I'd never seen this move used by anyone in the game, and Skull Kid himself didn't have any moves. As the death screen played, my lifeless body still burning, the Skull Kid laughed and the screen had faded to black, only to have me reappear in the same place. I decided to charge him, but the same thing happened. Link's body was lifted off the ground by some unknown force, and he immediately burst into flames, killing him. This time, during the death scene, the faint sound of the reverse song of healing could be heard. On my third and final try, I noticed there was no music playing this time. All there was this eerie silence. I remembered that in the original encounter with the Skull Kid, he was supposed to use the ocarina to either travel back in time or summon the giants. I attempted to play the Song of Time, but before I could hit the last note, Link's body once again horrifically exploded into flames and he died. As the death screen neared its end, it began to chug, as if the cartridge was trying to process a lot of something. When the screen came to, it was the same scene as the first 3 times, except this time, Link was lying on the ground in a dead position I'd never seen in the game before. His head tilted towards the camera, with the Skull Kid floating above him. I couldn't move, I couldn't press any buttons, all I could do was just stare at Link's dead body. After around 30 seconds of this, the game simply faded out with the message, "You've met with a terrible fate, haven't you?" before kicking me onto the title screen. Upon getting back to the title screen and starting again, I noticed my save file was no longer there. Instead of Link, it was replaced with "Your turn." Your Turn had 3 hearts, 0 masks, and no items. I selected Your Turn, and immediately when I did, I was returned to the Clock Tower rooftop scene of my Link dead and the Skull Kid hovering over me. With the Skull Kid's laughing looping again and again and again, I quickly hit the reset button, and when the game booted up again, there was one more save file added, below Your Turn, entitled Ben. Ben's save file is right back where it was before, at the Stone Tower Temple, with the moon almost crashing. I turned the game off at that point. I'm not superstitious, but this is way too fucked up even for me. I haven't played it at all today. Hell, I didn't even get any sleep last night. I kept hearing the reverse song of healing music in my head and just remembering the sense of dread I felt exploring Clocktown. I drove back to the old man's house today to ask him some questions with a buddy of mine. No way I was going there alone. Only to find that there was a for sale sign on the front yard. When I rang the doorbell, nobody was home. So now I'm back here writing down the rest of my thoughts and recording what had happened. Sorry if some of this has grammatical errors and whatnot. I'm running on no sleep here. I'm terrified of this game, even more now that I'm reliving it a second time writing all this down. But I feel there's still more to it than meets the eye, and that there's something calling me to investigate this further. I think Ben is something in this equation, but I don't know what. And if I could get a hold of the old man, then I would be able to find some answers. I need another day or so to recuperate before tackling this game again. It's already taken a toll on my sanity. But next time I do this, I'm going to be recording my footage all the way through. The idea to record only came to me towards the end, so you'll see the last few minutes of what I saw, including Skull Kid and the LG statue. But it's on YouTube, just here. I'm going to stay in this thread for a little while longer before I fall asleep to answer any questions you guys may have, or hopefully listen to your ideas or theories to help me shed some light into this, or maybe things I should try to do. I think I'm going to play Ben's file tomorrow to see what happens. Maybe I was supposed to do that all along. I don't believe in paranormal shit, but this is a little fucked up. But maybe this Ben guy is really just a good hacker or programmer. I don't want to think about the alternatives if he's not. Post 2, September 8th, 2010. I'm going to post what happened and the link video footage, but last night everything got a little bit too real for me. I think I'm done messing around with this. I passed out pretty much immediately after making that thread, but last night, that Elegy of Emptiness statue, I had a dream about it. I dreamt that it was following me in my dreams, that I would be minding my own business when I'd feel my neck hairs stand up on end. I would turn around and that thing, that horrible lifeless statue, would be staring at me with those empty eyes, merely inches away. In my dream I remember calling it Ben, and never before had I had a dream that I could remember so vividly. But the most important thing is I did get some sleep, I suppose. Today, putting off playing the game as long as I could, I drove back up to that neighbourhood to see if the old man came back. As I expected, the car was still gone and no one was home. As I was walking back to my car, the man next door mowing the grass killed the power to his lawnmower and asked if I was looking for someone. I told him that I was looking for the old dude that lived here, to which he told me what I already knew. He was moving. Trying a different avenue, I asked if the old man had any family or relatives I could talk to. I discovered that this old man had never been married, nor did he have any children or grandchildren through adoption. Starting to become worried, I asked one final question, one that I should have asked from the beginning. Who was Ben? The man's expression turned grim when I learned that 4 doors down around 8 years ago on April 23rd. The man informed me that it was the same day as his anniversary. That's how he knew the specific date. There was an accident with a young boy named Ben in the neighbourhood shortly after his parents moved, and despite any further attempts to talk to the man to get more information, he wouldn't divulge anything else. I went back and started playing again. I loaded up the game and immediately I jumped to the title screen where the mask flies by. The sound that played was not the normal whoosh sound. It was something much more higher pitched. I pressed start, racing for the worst, but just 2 nights ago, the files, Your Turn and Ben, were displayed. Truth be told, I looked at the Ben file earlier. It seems to fluctuate between displaying the owl save and not. I brought up the Ben file, hesitated for a moment, noticing that the stats were not the same as they originally were 2 days ago. It seemed he'd already completed the Stone Tower Temple this time. Summoning my courage, I selected it. Immediately I was thrust into complete chaos. Sure enough, I was outside Stone Tower Temple, but that's about all that was expected. The zone itself wasn't called Stone Tower Temple, but rather STONE. And immediately a dialogue box of complete gibberish that I couldn't make out greeted me. Link's body was all distorted. His back was crooked violently to the side where his posture was permanently disfigured. Link's expression was dull, almost monotone. He had an expression on his face that I didn't recognise before. It was a blank look, as if he was dead. As Link stood there, his body spasmed irregularly back and forth. I examined what had become of my avatar and noticed that a C button item I had never seen before was on screen. Some kind of note, but pressing it did nothing. Sounds played back and forth that I didn't recognise from the game, almost demonic in nature, and there was some kind of high-pitched yip or some kind of laugh someone kept playing in the background. I had all of 2 minutes to take in the environment before another of those fucking Elegy of Emptiness statues was summoned, and immediately after I was cut into the Dawn of a New Day screen. Except this time, it was without the I subtext. I was a Deku scrub in Clocktown. This scene would normally play after the first time you travelled back in time. Tattle would say, What happened? It's as if everything has..." But instead of saying, "started over," she finished with her remark of broken text as the laugh of the happy masked salesman played in the background. I was put back into the control of my character, but from a fucked up camera angle, I was looking from behind the door to the clock tower, watching my avatar run round as Deku Scrub, seeing as how I really had no place to go, because I couldn't see anything. I begrudgingly went inside the door. There, I was greeted by the happy masked salesman, who simply told me, "You've met with a terrible fate, haven't you?" before the screen whited out. I was in Termina Field as a human again. I might as well not have been playing the game anymore. I was being warped around and there was no sign of a day clock or anything. I took a moment to get my bearings as I looked around the field, and immediately I could tell that this wasn't normal. There were no enemies, and a twisted version of the Happy Mask Salesman theme was playing. I decided to run towards Woodfall before I noticed a gathering of 3 figures off to the side of the screen, one of them being Epona. As I approached them, to my horror, I saw the Happy Mask Salesman, the Skull Kid, and the Elegy of Emptiness statue just standing there. I figured maybe they were bugged out, but by now, I told myself I should know better. Nevertheless, I approached them and carefully found that the Skull Kid was playing some kind of idle animation on loop. Same with Epona, and the Elegy of Emptiness statue was doing what it had been doing all along. Just standing there, eerily. It was the Happy Mask Salesman that scared me more profoundly than the other 2. He was too idle, wearing that shit-eating grin, but wherever I moved, his head slowly turned and followed me. I had not engaged in any dialogue with him, nor was I in combat with him, yet his head continued to follow my movements. It reminded me of my first encounter with the Skull Kid at the top of the clock tower. I pulled out my ocarina, to which the game played the ding sound when you're supposed to be playing your ocarina, and I tried the song that I hadn't played yet, the Happy Mask Salesman's own song, and the song that had been playing on loop back in day 4, the Song of Healing. I finished playing the song, and as I did, an ear-piercing shriek blasted on my TV. The sky immediately started flashing, the Happy Mask Salesman twisted theme song sped up, intensifying the fear inside of me, and Link exploded into flames and died. The 3 figures stayed lit up during my death screen as they watched my lifeless body burn. I can't describe to you how sudden and terrifying the transformation from eerie to terror is. You're going to have to watch the video if you want to see firsthand. That same fear caused me to lose sleep 2 days ago, started to grip me again. I was met with the text, "You've met with a horrible fate, haven't you?" For the 3rd time. There has to be some kind of meaning to it. I had little time to ponder as I was immediately given another small cutscene of transforming into Majora, and now I find myself in the Great Temple Bay. Hesitant, but curious to see what the game had in store for me, I slowly made my way towards the beach, where I found Epona. I wondered why the game had decided to put her there. With the game implying that she was trying to get a drink, unable to take the mask off, I decided that riding the steed wasn't the reason she was placed there. Suddenly, I realised that Epona kept neighing, and the way she was angled made it look like she was trying to signal a point to me in the distance. It was a hunch, but I dove into the Great Bay and started swimming. Sure enough, I almost missed it. I found something at the bottom of the ocean. One last Elegy of Emptiness statue. I went down to examine it, and suddenly my Zora started doing a choking animation I had never seen a Zora do before, which didn't even make sense because Zoras can breathe underwater. Regardless, my character choked to death and died, and again, the statue was the only thing that was highlighted in my death screen. I didn't respawn this time. I was booted back to the main menu as I restarted my console. The press start screen was before me. I knew the only reason why it would put me here was because the save files had changed again. Taking a deep breath, I pressed start, and I was right. The new save files told me about Ben. Now it made sense why the statue appeared when I tried to go into the laundry pool. The game must have anticipated how I would try to escape day 4 Clocktown. The 2 save files told me his fate, as I suspected. Ben was dead. He had drowned. The game obviously isn't through with me. It taunts me with the new save files. It wants me to keep playing. It wants me to go further. But I'm done with this shit. I'm not touching any more of these files. This is already way too horrifying for me. I don't even believe in the paranormal. But I'm running out of explanations at this point. Why would somebody send me this message? I don't understand it. I just get too depressed thinking about it. This footage is up here for those who want to see it and try and analyse it. Maybe there's some sort of coded message in the gibberish, or something symbolic in what I went through. I'm too emotionally and mentally drained to fuck with this anymore. Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for listening, I should say. That was one of the iconic creepypastas, which is Ben Drowned. I've been kind of avoiding this creepypasta for a little while because it's been like, I went to read it on the wiki and it's huge, it's massive, but I've only just realised how I'm actually reading through it, that the last part of the story isn't actually part of the story. It's like little add-ons The end part of the story isn't scary, it's just him telling you how he's doing now, what he's doing, etc, etc, which isn't really relevant. You know, we're here for the creepy story. But if you are enjoying these creepypasta story times, let me know which ones you want to see in future. I doubt hardly anyone's going to get to this point in the video, the 25-minute mark. I'm looking at it right now. But if you do, there's a playlist on the screen right now for the creepypasta story times. There's a recommended video somewhere for you that YouTube's going to pick for you based on what you like and what I make. Other than that, all I can say is thank you very much. I've been GilloBoiJr, and bye bye.